Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, it's really lovely to see you. Hello Camille.
Hello everyone.
And we'd like to welcome lesfic author Kelly Aten-Keilen. Hello Kelly.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today. How did you get into writing?
It was kind of accidental. I'm not a writer. Well, I mean, I was never a writer. I was a poet, like all kids sometimes, I think, growing up. I did a lot of poetry, and I did poetry my whole life. Poetry was just my catharsis. It was my way of dealing with emotions. And but I have always been a prolific reader from the time I was maybe 8-ish. And by the time I was 10, I found paper bags full of paperbacks, big sacks in my mom's closet full of paperback books, almost all science fiction and fantasy. And I remember begging my mom to let me read them, and she did. So that's how I got interested in authors such as Andre Norton, Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, Mercedes Lackey, Anne McCaffrey, all of those, Piers Anthony, all of those classic kind of sci-fi. And so I've always been interested in it. But the problem is I'm a very, very fast reader. So I can read a book a day easily. I can read hundreds of thousands of words of fanfic in a week. And I'll give myself a headache, but I'm an obsessive reader. Obsessive. Like, I can't not do it. If I start a story, I have to finish. And it's not always healthy because you just don't stop for things like sleep. And then you have to work, but you're tired. So at any rate, the writing process started in 2015. I was reading too much, as in beyond my budget. So I'm like, well, I started buying the free books on Amazon. And free books are often you get what you pay for. And after, I don't know, maybe the 10th or 20th terrible free book, I said, I can do better than this myself. And my wife said, who wasn't my wife at the time yet, why don't you? I'm like, I don't know. And I dusted off some old stories that I had started when I realized I sucked at writing. And so I dusted off some old stories, and I finished this fanfic. It was a Xena, the Xena Warrior Princess, post Finn, which is the Friend in Need 1 and 2. If you watch the series, last 2 episodes after Xena's dead. Sorry, it's not a spoiler at this point. She dies at the end. So it's been enough years, not a spoiler. So I finished this fanfic, and it ended up being something like, it was over 65,000 words. And I was like, whoa, like, I did this. And then I had another story that I had started. It was about 20,000 words in. It was urban fantasy. And I finished that. And I'm like, holy cow, like, this is a new thing. I don't know how to explain it. Like, when you discover you can do something new and it's fun and you're like, this is amazing. And so all these people kept commenting, and I got emails, and it was just the most amazing feeling that I could touch people. They're like, I love these characters. I love what you created. So I went back and I started writing another book in the Amazon. I finished the 3rd book of that series. But at that point, the stuff that I had posted online on Archive of Our Own migrated to Facebook. And people were sharing the links to my fan fiction and original fiction on Facebook. And that's when I picked up my beta reader, Ted Beveridge. And Ted read the 3 Amazon books, and he said, you need to publish these. He's read more lesbian fiction than anyone I've ever met. And he told me, you need to publish these. So I started looking for publishers. It was an accident. I didn't start writing because I thought that, hey, I'm going to write some books.
And why urban fantasy? You wrote under a lot of genre. Why urban fantasy was the first, and what's your favorite genre to write?
Urban fantasy, it just happened to be a book that I started back. It wasn't a book. It was just a story that I started back in 2007, 2008. And I don't know. I think I've mentioned before to people that I'm inspired by music. I'm inspired by lyrics, by song titles, by the songs themselves. Book. And I don't know why urban fantasy. Maybe at the time I was stuck in Laurel K. Hamilton's, shapeshifter vampire books. Like, I jump around, and sometimes I'm just inspired by whatever happened to have read most recently and said, ooh, this is neat, So that's how my steampunk-ish book was born. And to your question earlier, Camilla, sci-fi definitely my favorite to write, because I think I've always been primarily like a sci-fi person at heart. Oh, speaking of sci-fi at heart, can you see my little circuit with the heart? Yep. I bought this shirt for myself after I wrote Remember Me Synthetica, because I was all like geeked out about robots at the time. So
I think you need to move back and show it to us again. I don't think we. Yeah, there we go. Oh, we can see it properly
it's
now.
like
Yeah.
a circuit chip. But yeah, sci-fi, I think sci-fi is something that's always drawn me. Even reading, I love reading fantasy books. I grew up reading fantasy books, but science fiction books were just my jam.
Speaking of sci-fi and RMS, I think you wrote somewhere that it was somewhat an allegory for trans identity or maybe trans issue. Could you tell us a bit more about that and about the space queer people and queer fiction must take in the sci-fi universe?
I did actually, as I was writing, there was a scene. Can I do like scene spoilers?
Of course.
Okay. I'm assuming anybody watching this hopefully would have read the book, but the scene near the end when they're in the basement and she sees the real Alexandra Turing for the first time, and you have that scene where Emily, says, "I don't care what's on the inside. Like I essentially, you are who I love." Like, and I kind of saw it as, an allegory or similarities to the trans experience, in that a trans male or a trans female, they might have been born a certain way and they transition, but inside in their mind they have always been, let's say, female. And when they make their body match the way they feel on the inside, trans female, there's still a woman, and so I feel like it's almost like a mirror of this trans experience. And so when Emily says that she would love her no matter what, it doesn't matter, like, what she is on the inside. Like, she's real. She's still real, even if she wasn't born a biological woman. She's still a woman, if that makes sense. And I think it's really important. I think own voices is very important when it comes to writing. And I think it's extremely important to promote people who are writing own voices, because that should be, when you have a topic about, let's say, robotics, and, it's kind of cool if you have an actual roboticist who's writing it, because I'm going to take it that much more seriously than just an amateur who maybe knows some roboticists and does a lot of reading about it, And I think it's important that in society, that for us to normalize, we all know that people of color are normal. We all know that people of different genders and different sexualities are normal. But the problem is, the definition of normal is this spot here out of all of this. So how do we expand the definition of normal to encompass these other things that people aren't that familiar with? And the only way to do that is to give people exposure. I've had people say, I never knew any gay people before, but you're not that bad, to me. And it's like, just, sometimes you don't empathize and accept until you get to know people and you see, look, we have common things. We have common interests. We have common people that we love. And then you realize that that's when empathy starts, because you realize that this is a person with loves and hates and cares, just like you and just like all of your other normal friends. And that's when it starts to become normal. And I don't think that as long as people aren't exposed to all these different notions and ideas and genders and sexualities, they're not going to start having empathy. So it's really important in fiction, in movies, in art, in television shows, to see all of these other people that are differently abled, people that are differently colored or different races, different genders, different sexualities. I think it's important to see all these things in your day-to-day life so that they can become normal to those people that aren't normally exposed to it.
I couldn't agree more with that. So that was
Oh
very
yeah.
well said. Yeah. So can I ask, expanding on that? So in RMS, you're talking about AIs, especially self-realized AIs. How did that come about? How do you decide to write about a self-realized AI?
I think so. This book was one of the ones, and I posted on it on the page where it was inspired by the song "Synthetica" by Metric, and it's kind of like a fast paced Synthetica. And listening to some of the lines, and I didn't really listen super close to the lines. I just thought, oh, wouldn't it be neat because it sounded like a drug, like a manufacturer's drug, like Synthetica. Like ask your doctor today if Synthetica is right for you, And so Synthetica, I know it's kind of weird. Synthetica sounded like a drug. So my original concept was to write about like this drug. And then I don't know sometimes how these ideas pop into my head. And I started thinking about the story about a woman who wakes up from a coma and, she's missing memory. And then she starts digging into her own stuff while she's working. And she realizes that, that this project, like, all of her files are hidden, and then she realizes this project she's working on, like, is really her. And I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea.
So do your characters talk to you when you're writing? Do they direct the plot, or do you actually have a plot and do you stick to it?
A lot of times I'll have a general idea of what I want to do. Sometimes I don't. I think those are the stories I struggle on the most. If I know that I want to write a story that has certain themes or elements in it, but I don't necessarily have a plot, it makes it hard for me to pants it out. So I think those are the ones I struggle with most. I've done it, but it's not as easy for me. I prefer to have some sort of like overarching plot, at least penciled down. I say pencil, but I don't do anything without typing. So I try to have that. For instance, I have a story idea in my folder of story ideas right now, and the written out idea is about 5 pages, single space long. So, I mean, yeah, and that one will eventually, someday, maybe I'll write it when I get time, but just random like that. That's like 5 pages long. Another one, I had a story idea and it was like 3 pages long. I think I wrote whatever that one was at some point. But yeah, I prefer to actually have an idea ahead of time. So, for instance, with Remember Me Synthetica, I said that the song inspired the story with the song title and the lyrics. And so I kind of had an idea of what I wanted it to be about. But some of the best parts about writing and about creating a book, it's like taking a journey. Like you can say, okay, I want to go from California to New York, and I at least want to stop and see the Grand Canyon and the St. Louis Arch, right? But that's just very vague outline. That's not telling you, oh, I went into this little, restaurant in Reno, or I, saw the Cumberland Gap and I went hiking along the trails. So there's a lot of little stuff that you can kind of plan out a story. There's a lot of ways that it will go wrong. I have another sci-fi book, Waking the Dreamer, and I had this whole idea of the story plotted out. It had a completely different name. It was called Remember Me, or it was called Julia Dreams originally. I got about a third of the way in, almost halfway in. And jokingly, I sent this wild idea to my beta reader, and I said, what if I did this? And he immediately said, oh my God, you have to do that. And I did that. And so I ended up, because I did that, I changed the title of the book, and it really changed the whole feel of the book. And that book has a massive twist. It is not like Remember Me Synthetica twist, where people either it took them by surprise or they're like, oh, I already know what's going on, like 2 chapters in. So Waking the Dreamer has a twist. Nobody has guessed it yet. But it was just interesting that you can have an idea plotted out and it can go along exactly that line, or it can completely kind of go off the rails. So I changed the name of a book right before I sent it to my publisher. So sometimes you just don't know until the end.
So you wrote about 12 books, that's correct? So
Yes.
you create way more character than that. Pick 3 to have a dinner party.
Pick 3 to have a dinner party with. Oh, man. Do I have to pick the location of the dinner party as well?
You're free to choose.
There's so many that are kind of close to my heart. Like I love Remembering Synthetica. I love the characters. I think that would be really fascinating to meet Alex. So let's throw Alex in there. Oh, you're kind of evil. Only 3?
Only 3.
That's rude. Oh, I really love my my couple from the Sovereign of Psiere. All right, I would pick Alex, and I don't think I can do it. That's like picking a favorite child. It's
Well, she's giving you 3.
You know what? You know what? Take Alex out of the mix. I just want to sit down for a meal with Kiri Fletcher and Queen Oriana and the leopard Gata.
Perfect.
Interesting.
Do that.
So talking about dinner parties and stuff. So if you're having a down day, what do you do to cheer yourself up? Like especially if it's not the great writing day, or you have maybe not read a not so great review. What things like what might cheer you up?
I mean, as much as I like food, it's not necessarily my cheer up. I know that's my wife's cheer up. Also, wine is her cheer up. But I think sometimes when I'm stuck and I'm not writing, I do like to procrastinate a lot. But one of the things that kind of makes me feel better, because rarely, like, I've never been unhappy. We play a lot of games, and it can be something as simple as a dice game or a big complex board game. And it could be cooperative, it could be competitive. And I think that like never fails to like make me happy is when, we just kind of get away and we play games. Like a little recharge, I guess. Or you read a book. And when I say read a book, it would be, if I want to pick me up, sometimes I'll just read a book that I've already read. Because when I reread books, my favorite ones, like, I don't know about you, but when I finish a book, I'm often, if it's a really great book, I'm left with this emotion inside. And sometimes when I want to reread a book, it's because I want to feel that emotion again. So I'll go back and pick. It's like when you want comfort food. Essentially, a book is comfort food. So if you want comfort food and you're like, oh, I'm down and I just really want mashed potatoes, and you go to your favorite restaurant and you get mashed potatoes because you like the way mashed potatoes make you feel. That's how books are. Like, this book made me feel so many things, and I just love the way it left me. And so I'm going to go back and read that book again because I need to be cheered up, and I know that it's a guaranteed way to do it.
That's a great analogy, isn't it? Yeah.
It's perfect.
Comfort reads.
Comfort reads.
2020 was a tough year for many people. But let's not talk about it. 2021, what can we expect from you?
Oh, you're saying not to talk about 2020, but 2020 affects 2021, especially for writers. And I know some writers that have been super productive, and then other writers like me that are just struggling. I'm used to writing fast. I'm used to just kind of cranking out books. I mean, this is my 3rd publishing year, and I published 12 books. So, and that's, some of it was catching up with a backlog. And I think this last book was the hardest for me because I realized that I have no more backlog. I have nothing that's complete. And that's a weird experience for me. When you hear authors talking about, oh, I have a deadline, I have to have this book done and back into my publisher because I promised them on this date. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what you're talking about. Because I've just always had books like, here you go, here you go, here you go. and now I'm at that point where I don't have a book finished yet. So 2021, I do have I guess goals and aspirations. Like right now, I'm struggling just to finish one book this year, and I'm gonna do it. I last year I was kind of struggling with 2 books. I put 4 books out, and I noticed that conversely, the amount of books that I publish means less books that I write. My writing drops when my publishing quantity goes up. And that's because you have things like editing through a million times for every single book. And then you have promotions, and it's just a very distracting world. So as an author, my goal this year is to finish the book that I'm working on right now. I would like to also set the same goal of 2 books next year, and I'm hoping that there will be no massive COVID issue that is going to interfere with that. My goal was 2 books this year too. So just completing one is only half my goal. So 2 books next year. I also set a goal for, looking at my books this year. I would like to win awards. I mean, I'm writing. I would like to get recognition for what I think maybe is my best work. So I have a goal for Remember Me Synthetica or Remember Me Synthetica and something else. My goal is to win 2 awards next year. So, and whatever makeup that might be. So I guess writing 2 books, winning 2 awards, and getting back to GCLS.
Perfect. So you've said that you wanted to win 2 awards. Good luck with that. I suppose it would be one of your most important and happy moment in your career. But as of now, what is your most important moment in your writing career?
On one hand, I could say, publishing my first novel, it was an amazing experience, that somebody took a chance on me, a new writer, not only, but they crammed out, 5 books that year. But on the other hand, that was also like really hard and kind of traumatic because it was my first novel. And I'm aware that I am a significantly better writer now than I was then. And at the time, as a brand new author, oh man, every single negative review or negative rating was just like, shots to the heart, right? And that was almost for that first entire year, every time something would come up. And so it's hard for me to balance that and say this was my happiest moment as a writer, was this moment, because it's kind of overshadowed by all this other pressure and stuff. And it was before I learned how to deal with negative feedback or negative ratings or negative reviews. So that it's bittersweet. I can't say that it's my favorite, but I will say honestly, it was winning the Goldie Award for Waking the Dreamer, my debut year. Not for a debut novel. It wasn't my debut novel, but it was, competing with everybody else who had been writing science fiction in my love category, my science fiction category, and winning a Goldie in that. And I think that was just, I honestly shortlisted, and everybody's like, oh, you have a chance, and I'm looking at all the other books, and I'm like, I don't. And I was so convinced that I didn't have a chance of winning. I didn't prepare any sort of speech, nothing. There was nothing prepared ahead of time. And I that year I was actually I was posting during the ceremony all the winners on TLR, on the TLR Facebook page. So I'm posting all the winners, and I would type the name of the category, and then I would wait, and then I would type the winner as they won. So I typed in, science fiction and fantasy, and then I'm waiting for them to read the name, and somebody next to me is saying, that's you. And I'm like, what? They're like, it's you, go. And I'm like, oh, and I dropped my phone, and I was like, I grabbed my coat, and, and I went up to the stage because I remember what they told us, if you win and how much time you have. So, and then just going up to the stage, and I did get choked up. So I think that was probably the most significant moment of memory, winning this award. I needed that affirmation. When I got shot down by one publisher that's like, nope, do you have any contemporary romance? Because I tried publishing the Archer first, or the Fletcher first. And then the next one I sent, and they're like, and essentially no, no, no. You know, and a lot of it is, I understand, as a publisher, you don't want to take a chance on a brand new author, especially a brand new author who does write in not the big money making genres. So I will always be grateful to Regal Crest for essentially taking a chance on, you know, an unknown, a brand new person who, you know, and I guess you always have to take a chance, but they took a chance on me, so it made me very happy. I don't know.
Thanks very much for
That's
joining
very-
us today. It was great talking to you. So, any
It's
last
like-
words for your readers, for your fans? Any message for them?
I don't have a good message. You know, I guess not necessarily for my readers and fans. It's just, you know what? Be safe, be healthy, be happy, be happy. Sorry. Right. Be safe, be healthy, be happy. Read the books you want to read. Kiss the girls you want to kiss, right? Read the books about kids and girls.